Hi Fancy fans! Welcome back to Flights of Fancy. Today we'll be drawing another fan favorite from the 1990s, Magus, from the original Chrono Trigger on the SNES. It's going to be another pencil composition, inking, and watercolor as usual. I hope you enjoy it and let's get started. Here we are with the composition. This part is surprisingly tricky because you're wondering how much of the character should I show, what position should they be in, where should they be in relation to the background and that sort of thing. I did a little research to refresh my memory because it has been quite a while since I played the game. And it looks like his signature move is this little glove pull, which I imitated in the intro. Kind of gives him this sort of intimidating air. And once I got that down, I inked it in, and I will put in the description as usual what I'm using here, but they're basically archival pens and there's multiple brands, but they are all waterproof, so they're not going to smudge once you start inking. And erase away the pencil. And now I can go back in with a thicker pen. This one has a little brush tip on it, so I can make an especially thick outer line, which I think gives the composition a little pop. And I would go ahead and do thicker, medium thick lines in the interior to distinguish between, his body and his cape and his gloves and his arm and so forth. And they do come in multiple thicknesses, from very, very fine to pretty thick. And once I get that down, I can start in with the watercolor. Of course, this was the early 90s, so everything was still very bright colors and almost to our eye seemingly clashing, but that was the style of the time. So I had to pick and choose between the concept art that was created for the game, that was in the player's manual and things like that, and the advertising, and the 16-bit art that was in the game itself. And they were not the same, so I just pick and choose between those to make whatever I want. A little artistic license going on here. It did have this very distinctive neck scarf, though a lot of the characters had this neck scarf thing. I don't know if that seemed cool or if it were some sort of, if it made the animating or drawing of it easier. But I thought it was pretty distinctive for this game, especially to have the neck scarf. And also, of course, his codpiece, very distinctive. I think codpieces came back in a big way in the 80s and early 90s. And his, likewise, red-purple pants. And I go ahead and do the wash of color and a little bit of shading with just more saturated of the same color that I mixed up. And then I'll go back and give it another shading later. And as you can see, I'm doing a lot of texturing with this cape. I just like to have a lot of texture. I just love texturing. It really makes the art pop. I don't want it to be that flat art style. So I put down little drops of water. And I went back and did the splashes of color too. So you have light and dark splotches. It's either weather worn or maybe it's a faded design that they put on there. It's probably a really, really old cloak. And now I'm going into the leather pieces, and it looked to me like it was a fairly light colored leather, but that it was really shiny, and there's lots of shadows. It's nighttime, so they got a very deep dark shadow treatment. And it was really funny because a lot of the art from this game had these like super shiny white shines, so I tried to recreate that a little bit. And so we go back, and since the paint is a little bit wet, the darker brown shadows bleed a little bit, which is perfect. I love that look, that kind of watery look, and it mellows out as it dries a little bit. And then you can go back once it dries if you want any extra sharper shadows. Here with the belt, and now we're coming into the hair. For some reason I remembered it being black, but actually it's sort of a blue, purpley white. Like he has white hair that has these deep dark purpley blue shadows in it. I'm not, just a little, my interpretation. And he had very pale skin, not as pale as I recall, but still on the pale side. And of course I wanted it to be very shadowed, so I had to come in with a very light wash to start, and then just layer and layer and slowly darken the pigment of my skin tone that I mixed up. I actually use very few colors when I do watercolor. I just mix up my own color on the spot depending on what I need. So I'm really only using like, I don't know, 4 or 5 colors. And of course you don't need white with watercolor because the paper is already white. You just use the white of the paper. And I only used a little bit of black if I'm using a dark color, but I wanted it to be darker and or more saturated. But you really only need just a teensy amount depending on what you're working with. Here I am having fun with the shading, going back to his face, putting in a few darker shadows. And I had to make it super dark because his eyes are like deep, set, or he has smudged makeup on, but it's like that deep set eye look. And he's got like these prominent eyebrows with no eyebrow hair. Just a pretty distinctive look too. So that was an interesting challenge to create the menacing look without any eyebrows. At least not any eyebrow hairs. He's got prominent eyebrow ridges. Going back for some more shading. So I have like his cloak going from the lower lighter side to the deeper, more shadowed, upper part of the cloak where it's getting closer to his body, but then I came back once it had mostly dried and put the shadow of the ripples, so it really gave it that 3D look. And as his face dries, I'm coming back with more and more shadowing, as I was talking about. Okay, here we come in with the eye color. They're pretty distinctive eye color. Oh, and he had some silver belt and leg straps in the concept art, so I just put like a dash of blue for the shadowing, so it would just like be white silvery, but with a little bit of blue shadowing. And come in here with the background real fast. I just kept it pretty simple. There's like the moon shine coming down through the atmosphere and making like the moon trail on the water. And that was dry brush, so there's barely any paint on my brush as I go back and forth. So the white of the paper shines through like the glimmering water would against the moon. And the rest of the water's like almost black because it's nighttime. And there we go. Thank you so much for watching. I had a really great time. Very first favorite golf. Plastic favorite. Introducing.